Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's Divorce-a-Palooza episode. Today, I have Cherie Morris with me. Cherie is a divorce coach, a parenting coordinator, and the founder of her practice, Dear Divorce Coach. And Cherie and I are going to talk about bad mouthing. Hi, Cherie.
Hi, Jackie. So nice to be here with you.
Thanks for doing this. Tell my listeners and viewers why this is such a loaded question. Bad mouthing. Why should you not do it?
Well, first, let me say how cathartic it is to do it, right? We all do it. I want to validate the feelings around it. But the reason it's a bad idea is because it's bad for our kids. So as cathartic as it is for us, and certainly there's space and time to do it, just not with the kids, but it hurts them. Remember, your children have this other parent and they feel part of them and a loyalty to them. And so when you disparage that co-parent, you're disparaging the child.
Could not agree more. And I remember as a kid, even when my parents, and they were never divorced, they were married, when they would talk about each other, it would kill me.
Yes.
And listen, I had wonderful parents,
Yes,
but it's hard to live with someone.
it is.
And so even if this isn't just divorce, but kids hurt so much, it hurts them because they're idolizing both of you and they don't want to hear that.
They don't. And I come from a family of divorce. My parents divorced when I was very young at a time when we didn't do any of this kind of work, right? And they did mostly a good job. But it did hurt me to hear them talk about each other or even to hear their partners talk about my other parent.
Right. Okay, now I want to ask you if someone's listening to this and they're saying, "Oh, I've been bad mouthing my ex. I'm such a horrible parent." We want to say, "Forgive yourself. It's okay. We've done it.
Yes.
We're not judging. Just try not to do it anymore."
And let's just say they deserve it. Of course they do. But
Every now and then. I mean, what are you going to do?
and it's okay. We're going to forgive ourselves. We're going to move on. And part of that is teaching our children also how to repair something that we've done badly, right? Because they're going to make mistakes too.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to what if your ex is bad mouthing you and your kids are saying, like, "Mom, dad called you a B" in front of his whole family.
So again, I really ask people right away to take a deep breath because that triggers us, right? All those feelings, like we may have already felt that his family didn't like us, or
Well, my first response would be like, "F him," and we don't want to do that.
you don't want to do it. You can say, "Oh, stop." The first response you can have, sort of a canned response, is that really hurts my feelings. I do think it's incredibly important for our children to learn that we are feeling people. It doesn't mean that we put all our feelings upon them, but to teach them that we have feelings, especially as they get to be teenagers. So it's okay to let them know that's hurtful to you. They want to know how you're going to take it and how you're going to respond. So I think there's a pause. And if it's all too overwhelming for you, you say, "Oh, that really hurts my feelings. I really can't talk about that right now." Or I'll get back to talking to you about that. But they want to see how you're going to respond because honestly, they probably didn't like it much either.
Well, I was going to say, you could say, "Wow, that must have been hard for you to hear because I know you love me and don't think I'm a B."
That's right. Or gosh, you might even sometimes think I'm a B because,
And by the way, the reason we're saying B and F is because my editor will edit out the real words.
It's really hard for me, Jackie, because I'm really good at saying those words. But I do think that's really important what you mentioned, which is let's stay in the space of our kids' feelings and notice what's going on for them. There's a reason they brought this to you, and they want to probably know what to say when your co-parent says something disparaging about you. But also they don't need to learn they don't need to be your advocate with your co-parent. That's not their job either. So just holding those feelings, that was a really good point that you made. And I think we all should do that.
Okay, what about if a kid says to you, "Mom, dad told me that you said that he said that the reason you got divorced is because you cheated."
That's a great question. And if you're not prepared in the moment to answer that question, the first thing you can do is say, "I need to process that a little. And if you're asking me if that is true, I will get back to you." If you're not prepared to talk about it. If you are prepared to talk about it, you could say something like, do you have a question for me about that? And that would be a really good answer too. But
And if it's not true, I think you can say, okay, the first thing I want to say is that's not true, but we can talk about it later. And if it is true, I'm not judging. Then you say, let's talk about it later. Do you have a question? Would you like to talk about it with me?
I mean, the lesson about affairs, honestly, Jackie, and I know this is hard for all of us to hear if we've ever been cheated on, is there usually was a reason. And it could be that your spouse had a sexual addiction on the extreme. The other, potential is you were very disconnected. So if we really want to have a rational discussion, and that is not with an 8-year-old, by the way, but with a 17 or a 20-year-old, then we're going to have to do some reflection about how that happens and think about the meaning for us so that we're more prepared to listen to the concern our child has, how it impacts them. It may be a different answer than we give to a friend.
And by the way, we're not saying the cheating was okay just because you were disconnected, that gave your ex the right to cheat. We're not saying that at all.
No, not at all. It's just we all, again, I guess I want to bring to this conversation a sense that we have a responsibility as a parent to co-parent to some degree, and how we do that matters. So we don't have license to total self-dysregulation. We have a responsibility to show up in a way that's authentic, but also responsible for our children. And that's not always easy to do, but we can do it with the right tools.
Okay, now next question about bad mouthing. What if your kids say something that is bad mouthing, like, Mom, I don't like Dad's new girlfriend or something like that? How do you handle that?
When especially if you are not much involved with Dad and his new girlfriend, I think a really great answer is to say, I hear that must be hard for you. Have you talked to Dad about that? Because I think sometimes they're looking for support and how to have that conversation with a parent that they may not have that intimate relationship with. So if you can give them some tips and tools rather than getting stuck on, yeah, she is awful, isn't she? She's not like me at all, and she'll never be your mother. Those are the things we want to say, and we shouldn't, right? So really giving yourself the space to pause and then getting to the meaning of the question for your child. And remember, an 8-year-old will ask something differently than a 17-year-old. An 8-year-old probably is mad because I remember my dad had a girlfriend who wouldn't let me go through her purse, and I was outraged. Well, of course she wouldn't, right? But I really didn't like her for that reason. So it could be she's mean, right? In a really direct and simplistic way that has nothing to do with the character of the
Oh my gosh, that is such a funny story.
you can
go through my purse.
I was going to ask.
Okay, I want to end this on a good note. What about positive things? Tell me about do you encourage your children to speak positively? Do you try to find something positive to say? How does that work?
That's a great question. I really like the space of positive and family memories. Likely there's something you can pull out of a family vacation that happened that you can mention at a moment that might be meaningful to your child, that doesn't talk about who your co-parent is now, that might strike a false note, because you never want to deceive your children, right? In that direct way. So trying to bring up a memory that was meaningful to you that might involve your co-parent, I think is a really good way to have a positive comment about them.
When I got divorced, my kids were only 3 and 1. And I remember when they were growing up, and really things were not great with their dad and I, but I would always tell them stories like, oh my gosh, your dad and I once got caught in this rainstorm and we got bit up by mosquitoes and we were hysterically laughing. And they're like, they love to hear stories about when the two of you were in love, because then they feel like, well, that led to them having me. And like, I say to my kids, like, oh, our wedding was beautiful. And I drive by when we're in the city and show them the building where we got married, because that still means so much to them. It actually still means a lot to me, because at the time we were in love. So if you bring up such a great point, Cherie, if you are as angry and resentful and bitter as you are about your ex and the divorce and whatever he did, if you can bring yourself back to those memories, it's very nice for everybody.
And I would say, as a final note here, that we're really teaching our children how to behave in their own relationships as well, right? And there is a continuum. It's okay if something has an ending. It doesn't mean it has to be completely toxic. Now, maybe our co-parent has chosen to make that toxic, but we can role model to them that there's an acceptance there.
Yes.
And that is the bigger lesson. So if we frame this and keep in mind that big picture for ourselves and our kids, we can get to the other side of this.
I just love it. Cherie, thank you so much for being here.
Jackie, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
And if you want to learn more about Cherie, you can find her at deardivorcecoach.com.